When you begin to change the way you look at things, things will begin to change.
We struggle sometimes. Everybody doesn't know it. We often put on our best face, and we don't share the struggles. We look successful, we smile, we laugh, we joke. But for every human being, we have issues that we're dealing with. Issues of maybe our health, our finances, relationship, issues at work, family, kids, husband, wife, mother, father, depression. We have issues, and to be sane, I guess, maybe that's not the right word, or to be a healthy, functioning individual, often we have to suppress, at least to the rest of the world, to everybody that we bump into, the things that we're dealing with. And when we see people maybe that are mentally ill, they're simply manifesting outwardly the issues that we try to keep in check. So it's not that we have less issues than what we call the mentally ill person who's acting out. We just have a way to control or to contain the issues that we deal with. And oftentimes we go to church, it doesn't help us. Church is supposed to be the place where we find deliverance, find wellness, find sanctuary from the struggles that we have in life. But even in church, it's the same situation. People are containing their issues. They're not really sharing their issues. So folks come to church, they don't want to drag their baggage in there, their dirty laundry for everyone to see. They want to wear their best clothes, have a tie straight or a nice dress on, just looking good. And so often we find people coming into the church, and the church really isn't a place for healing, for healing of those issues, because everyone we see looks like they have their lives together in every aspect. From the pastors and the elders, the deacons, the ushers, and the regular parishioners and everybody else. We think that we're alone. We think that we're dysfunctional because we have issues that other people aren't dealing with. But I want to share with you two things right now that's just not true. Everyone is dealing with something. And secondly, we're going to find a way to be well. Okay, so you might be the one. Say, well, you don't have to. But I give it to you, as we begin to discover how to become well in our situations and our issues in life, there are going to be other issues coming up, So it's not like we're ever going to be, 100%. Okay, we're just going to learn how to deal with our situations as they arise. It's like cleaning your house, You don't just clean it once a month. You try to keep it clean. So we're going to try to work that in our lives. Still, things are going to pop up. But we're going to be discovering today how to deal with those things and how to be well, and what works and what doesn't work, okay? I know as a staff pastor at a local church for like 20 plus years that the prayer lines are always full. And the reason, and sometimes the prayer lines do diminish. They don't diminish because the people are being delivered. They diminish oftentimes because the people have acquiesced to, oh, well, this is just, the way my life is. This is just what I'm dealing with. I'm going to deal with it. So we try to deal with it, unhappy. And so the diminishing prayer line does not mean that all the needs are being met. It means that people have been giving up. It's sort of like the unemployment statistics, How many people have claimed unemployment? Or, how many, there are people, after a while, they get exacerbated and they just stop. And so they're not claiming unemployment benefits, although they're unemployed. And so the stats can be deceiving, can be giving you the idea that everybody is now functional and working, but really they've just given up, okay? And we don't want that. We don't want that in the body of believers. We don't want that from a spiritual perspective. We don't want that from a human perspective. We want to be well. And so we're going to turn to Scripture. As we're talking about maybe weaknesses. And we're going to look at the Apostle Paul, okay, as he writes in 2 Corinthians. Now I'm going to warn you up front that I think the Apostle Paul might have made an error in his understanding of what he believes God spoke to him, okay? And so maybe it could be like, I don't want to scare you, maybe it could be like a picture, where you come into and see this great painting, maybe Mona Lisa, some painting, and you look at it, and then no matter where you're standing, and no matter who's in the building, so you got 20 people lined up all looking at it, it all looks to them like the photo, the picture is looking at them, okay? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that maybe the Apostle Paul wasn't necessarily wrong. Maybe there's just a couple of ways to take what he believes God spoke to him, and that's what we're going to look at today, okay? So we turn to the book of 2 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, starting in the 8th verse. Just 3 verses, 8 through 10. So this is Paul talking. He's saying, for this thing, no, let's start at verse 7, okay? At least I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of revelation. At least I should be exalted above measure through the abundance. He's saying, I should be feeling better than most of y'all because I know more than most of you of what God is saying. But, at least I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of revelations. There was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me. At least I should be exalted above measure. So what's keeping Paul humble, he's saying, is that he's got this issue going on in his life. Now Scripture never tells us what the issue is. People have come up with their opinions, But all he's telling us that he's got this issue going on that he can't shake, that he believes it's of the devil, and this keeps him humble because he knows that he's not better than anyone. Sort of what we've been talking about. We're all going through things, and Paul is saying, with all the stuff that I know, all the understanding of God that I have more than any of y'all, I could be exalted, but Satan has given me this affliction that I can't seem to rid myself of, and it's keeping me humble, recognizing that I'm really no better than anyone else. I'm suffering too. And so he goes on to say, for this thing I besought the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, God said, I prayed 3 different occasions that this might depart from me. But God spoke unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. And Paul goes on to say, most gladly therefore will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. So the word he got from God is that I'm not going to remove this issue that you're dealing with, Paul. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in wellness. So he goes on to say, therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distress for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I'm suggesting that this might be the area that I might take issue with Paul's conclusion that he is going to be rejoicing in his infirmities. That he is going in his reproaches, in persecutions and distresses for Christ's sake. No, I don't believe that's what we're being told here. What I believe that we're being told here, when he is praying for this issue to be removed of him, and the response is that, I'm not going to remove it. My grace is enough for you, because my strength is made perfect in weakness. That what he's telling Paul is that I'm not just going to take it from you. I'm in you, okay? In the meantime, my grace is sufficient for you. I am there. You are well in me, okay? But my strength in you is made perfect in your weakness is what we've been given to understand, that we have the ability. Where does God reside? In you, in me. Oftentimes we're sitting around waiting for God to remove something. Let me just go through this prayer line. Let me just do this, You know, and it doesn't happen. There are steps that we can take. There are things that we can do. So what I'm suggesting is it's sort of like being a believer, okay? But when you give your heart to God, when you make that decision, okay, we understand in the body of believers, the traditional teaching is that now you are well with God. Well, that doesn't mean all of your issues disappear. It means you are well with God. You know, I remember when I was ministering at juvenile detention, I had to be very careful. I found out early that I'd be speaking to the young people on a Sunday and expressing to them about God, about Jesus, and about forgiveness and all. And like more than half of the crowd, if not all of them, would raise their hand. They want to be saved. They want to be forgiven of their sins. Okay, and I'm like, great, you know, it must have been a great message. And then I come back the next Sunday, and so many of them are disappointed, you know, in God, in me. I'm like, why? Well, you said all my sins were forgiven. And then I went to see the judge Monday morning after you left, and they sentenced me to juvenile life. Okay, what's up with that? I thought my sins were forgiven. Well, see, they were forgiven from a God's perspective, from a human perspective. The grace of God was sufficient for them. But the situation of their life still had to be addressed, still had to be dealt with. Okay? And so what I'm suggesting then is, as believers, many of the things that we have gotten ourselves into, whether it's financial, whether it's relational, whether it's health, whatever it is, the issues at work and all, you know, we might be pressed with, you're about to get fired because I didn't come to work, or I have the onset of diabetes because I haven't been eating right, or my heart's kind of weak because I haven't been exercising, and all my cholesterol, my blood pressure, all these things are all jacked up because of the lifestyle that I've led. Well, God's grace is sufficient. You are well in God because of grace. But His strength is manifested in your weaknesses, that now you have the ability to begin affecting yourself so that you can become well. So when Paul is saying that now he rejoices in his infirmities and his reproaches and all these things that are wrong with him, I believe that's not the correct response that we have as believers. It's that, no, you know, we have these infirmities, and God's grace is sufficient for us, but it's up to us to handle these infirmities and do what it takes so that we might be well, okay? But I look at my life, you know, even as a believer, prior to being a believer, I mean, I was an atheist. I was out there in the world, you know, big time, just doing the things that people do, without any, you know, consideration of God or of morality or spirituality or any of that stuff. And so, I mean, I was like smoking 2.5 packs a day. I was out, I was drinking getting a buzz every single day, every night, you know. I was just living a totally immoral life. And lived in an apartment, you know, kind of beat up car situation, you know, just like most folks, just surviving paycheck to paycheck, you know, and all. I always had a fairly decent job. But when I had that revelation of God and became a believer, immediately my lungs didn't heal up from all the smoke I had been smoking. Immediately, whatever damage possibly the alcohol had been attempting to do in my life didn't automatically clear up. My finances the next day weren't okay. You know, my car didn't get well, you know, overnight and all. But when, you know, the grace of God was sufficient for me to be well with God, but my situation in life was still the same. God didn't remove all those situations that I had created over the years, and so everything was still the same. But I was well with God because God's grace was sufficient for me. But in me, in the weakness, the man that I am, now the God in me manifested as strength. And in time, I cleaned up all those things. A nice house, nice cars, you know, money in the bank. I don't smoke, I don't drink, you know, or any of that kind of stuff. I'm healthy, I exercise, I work out. That no, God didn't take the situation of my life that I was dealing with that was jacked up. No, God simply was the strength in my weakness, changed my mind, gave me ideas, and I was able to fix myself through the relationship, because of the relationship and the influence of the God that dwells in me, okay? So no, you don't. I didn't go outside and rejoice because my car was beat up. I didn't look at my bank account balance and rejoice because I didn't have any money in there. I didn't look at my health and be, you know, give praise because I was not as healthy as I could have been, or my house didn't look right, or my relationship, I had no relationship or anything that was significant, that was moral. No, that wasn't anything to rejoice about. It was the reality that in that situation, in that moment, that I recognized there was God and committed myself to God. God's grace was sufficient for me in him. And at that point, God in me, that the strength of God in weak me was able to manifest a wellness in the situations of my life. No, God didn't take those situations away. I moved to make the right choices to take those situations, motivated and influenced by the God in me, okay? That's what I'm saying. So we have a lot of things going on. So what I'm suggesting to you today, realize that whatever the situation is of your life, okay? I mean, there are certain situations that we've just gone far and beyond. I mean, if we have stage 4 this, or if we're just on the way out, because of the emphysema, or we got a, hole in our throat and we're getting ready because we're smoking too much or whatever issues, it's too late. I mean, there is appointed unto man to die, all of us. None of us are going to live forever. Okay, so that's not really an issue. And then we just transcend to another form of existence, so that's not really an issue. We do have to overcome that concern that we have with death and all. But the reality is there are certain decisions that we may have made in life that were just too far to be turned back. But still, even in that situation, the grace of God is sufficient. We are well in God, and we still have time, and whatever time we have left, we can use that time beneficially, even to minister to folks. Here we go. Okay, for me, okay, as I shared so many programs, I earned my MBA when I was 60. I went to school at St. Clair, earned my associate degree. I started when I was 50, MBA when I was 60, okay? But the reality is, I am very limited at 63. I'll be 63 this year. I'm very limited in what I can do with that degree, okay? I've been writing books. I love putting Martin Jarvis MBA at the bottom of the book, and I'm enlightened. And I would not give this up for anything in the world. I was a changed person. Education will change you, okay? And that's another way. God's grace is sufficient. Get educated. You will change. You'll have ideas, and your life will change. You'll affect things. Okay, but the reality is there's only so much that I can do. Like if I was like 23 or 24 or 25 years old, and get my MBA, it'd be a whole different story. We know that, right? Okay, but what I can do, I can talk to people. I can talk to this guy who's 30 years old thinking, man, it's too late, man, I didn't go to college and all this stuff. I can talk to a guy that's 28 thinking the same thing, or 40 years old saying, look, I went to school when I was 50. And I got my MBA when I was 60. If I could do it, you could do it. So still, even if you're on your deathbed, okay, or not quite your deathbed, but it's just too late to change some of the situations and circumstances of your life because of the decisions you made, there is still ministry in you. And whether you want to call it a religious ministry or just a regular, just person-to-person secular ministry, you can give advice to people who might be on the track that you were on. Don't go there, okay? For real. Don't smoke weed, because it's going to keep you from doing the things that you need to get done. Don't smoke cigarettes, because you're not going to have the energy, the stamina to do the things you need to do. Plus, it's taking an effect on your body and all. There are many things. I mean, for me personally, when they're coming up with all this, the legalization of marijuana and all this stuff, there are some of us that could say, it might not be a good idea, because if you get addicted to marijuana, you're probably not going to be accomplishing the things you could have accomplished had you not been. Okay, so you can always use your experience, no matter how much you've messed up. No matter how many doors that you have actually closed that cannot be opened because it's too late, 63 years old, there's still people that you could use that experience that you have had, even in failure, to help them so they won't fail. There's a scripture in the Bible talks about the clay, talks about the potter and the clay, and that some clay, is used as an example to the other clay on what not to do. Okay, so I see all of us as human beings, especially as parents now, that we are the clay that could be used as an example to teach folks what not to be. That doesn't mean your whole life is going to be thrown into the trash heap, but certain situations, certain successes that now will not manifest, are simply examples for those you care for and even those you don't know on what not to do and what should be done, okay? So I'm just sharing with you today, first of all, to look at the Apostle Paul and recognize that no, the point is not to rejoice in your infirmities and in your reproaches and on all the negative situations of your life, that God hasn't removed, but to recognize that you have the strength to remove those. You just got to know how to do it. Now we can look at exercise is a good thing. I mean, years ago I had an abdominal injury, terrible abdominal injury. My daughter was in the 2nd grade. She had been practicing karate since kindergarten, and she wanted to do track. And so it was like, okay, but she couldn't run a mile. So I couldn't either. She didn't know that. That's what we had parents, Let me get brushed up on this, So I helped her, man. I said, look, every day we're going to go to the Y, and we're gonna do a mile. So first we're going to start walking, and we're going to start, walking faster. Then we're going to start like jogging and maybe start running part of it and walking the rest of it and walking in back and forth. And we're not going to stop until you can run a whole mile, okay? and that's what we did, okay? And we came to, and I also told her, I said, look, I'm not going to shave until you can run that mile. And it was a few months, man. I had this big old beard going on, but we came to the point where we were able to run a mile together. There's a way. There are ways. So whatever your weakness is, there are ways. I think sometimes we just want an immediate fix. But at the risk of sounding, using an old adage, what took you a lifetime to screw up, it might take you a while to get it back together, okay? So if you blew all your money, blew all your 401k, it's going to take you a minute it's not going to miraculously show back up. You have to sacrifice, take the time, maybe double up on what you put in there just to get it caught back up to where it's supposed to be, okay? But there's always a way. Might take a little sacrifice on your part, but God's grace is sufficient. You are well in the process. God will give you, God within you, the strength within you, the strength of God within you in your weakness will give you the ideas, will give you the insight, will give you the way to make yourself well. And I believe that's what the word was actually telling Paul, that my strength in your weakness, you will be able to handle these yourself. I'm not just going to take it from you, okay? And so a lot of times we get despondent. I've seen people going through prayer lines like every Sunday, hasn't happened. You got to take control. You got to take control, for real. There might be people in your life that you want them to begin to take care of themselves better. Eat right, and exercise and do the things that they should do. And all the time you're telling them it's not happening, stop. Just be the example. Be the example in front of them of what you want them to be. And in time, they're watching. They see you. But see, they're on a path just like we're on a path. They struggle just like we struggle. Your strength might be their weakness, and their strength in you might be the influence that you have by demonstrating before them that this can be done, okay? For real. You pestering them isn't helping. I can't do it, and this man's just pestering me. No, just keep demonstrating it, and then let the God in them be the strength in their weakness. And you are the example that gives them the motivation, that gives them the belief that they can do it too, you see. There's a way. Just ragging on people, get saved, do this, do that, eat right, don't eat salt, all that kind of stuff. We just ragging on people. A lot of times that worry makes it worse. For real. Just relax, chill. Just get yourself together. And in that respect, use that concept even when working on yourself. When I was talking about that abdominal injury, basically, that was the time my daughter was running, when I had that abdominal injury. About halfway through, so I'm like, man, what can I do now? Somebody thought it was a double hernia or something. I didn't know what it was. But I knew I had to be running with my daughter or she wasn't going to make it. So one of the times I went to the Y, when I first had this, okay, I said, look, I'm just going to get a stool, sit in the corner while you do it, okay? I'll be there to motivate you. And I did that one day, and I was like, no, I can't do that. I got to run with her. But I got all this pain. Oh, well, that's my daughter. Parents, we know what I'm talking. You know what I'm talking about. So what I did, I began to exercise. It was tough. I had the cardio exercise, the martial art cardio exercise that I do today. This is like 15. This is no 2nd grade. This is 8 years later. Is what I discovered at that particular point when I had the abdominal injury. And it was an exercise that exercised all parts of your body, probably basically from your neck on down and all. And what I would do is I would do all these exercises, very, very tough exercises, but when it came down to where I was beginning to affect the abdominal area, I couldn't do it. So I would just do every part of the exercise I could without that part, okay? So you're talking about from my ankles all the way up to that part, and then from here all the way up to my neck. I was just exercising. And within about 4 or 5 months, and I was believing God, man. I was believing God. This was, again, okay, God didn't just take that from me. Because if you know I prayed, God, please take this from me. I was a mailman at the time, walking 20 miles a day, man. Man, I had to make a deal with management. I said, look, it's going to take me 10 hours to do 8 hours of work. But I won't charge you for that extra 2 hours. I'll just say I had to take a 2.5 hour lunch. And fortunately, the guy agreed. So for the next 5 months, man, I'm struggling carrying mail in the hood every step or every stumble. But I'm trying to be honest with the company I work for, and I wasn't charging them for that extra time it was taking me. I was just calling it lunch, so I wasn't getting paid for it, okay? And I was exercising everything around that area that was sensitive. And within like 5 months, I was well. So what I'm sharing with you is the grace of God was sufficient. The grace of God affected, I believe, management where I worked to allow them to do this, what I was asking, which they didn't have to do. It allowed me to still continue running with my daughter. It'd be like at the end of a work day, if I was trying to take it easy and walking, I'd feel a whole lot better. But then as soon as I would run with her, it would take me right back to the pain I was in earlier. So I was kind of jacked up. But after like 5 months, man, I was well. And what I believe is, and what I'm using as an analogy for this message here, is that I couldn't affect that abdominal area. You know, I was researching on the internet. I was doing all I could to find out what I could do. Teas and all kinds of stuff, nothing. But what I could do was simply exercise everything that was in my purview of influence. Everything that wasn't injured. Every part of me. There was no other part of me that injured. So it was only like 4% of my entire body that was injured. So I would exercise all the rest of my body. And what I believe, I see it sort of in a spiritual way. The strength of everything else focused in on that one area. And eventually the strength overtook that weakened area. And I was totally well. Now from a medical perspective, I don't know if that's what happened. But that's the way I see it in my mind. And that's why I'm telling you here. There are certain weaknesses that we have. So understand you want that weakness fixed. But don't let that weakness, that negativity, influence anything else in your life. And maybe this is what Paul is saying about how he rejoices, how he's not sad. You know, don't be consumed in the negativity about that small part of your life that's not well. Begin to rejoice in the part that is well and begin to work it and exercise it and make it as strong as you can. So if you got something wrong with your body that you can't personally fix, well, strengthen everything else in your body, everything else that you can, okay? And then see what happens. You know, a lot of times some of our sicknesses are exacerbated by a negative mindset, okay? By the depression, by the negativity. I mean, healing sometimes comes a lot slower when we're messed up. So as you begin exercising in all other aspects of your life, you're creating those endorphins, right? Dopamine, all this other stuff going on. You're feeling a whole lot better. And in that self-healing, we're brought back to where God is speaking to Paul, telling him that my strength in your weakness. That's the point. And so as you're beginning to get the endorphins kicking, dopamine kicking, all that other stuff, you're feeling great, you're feeling well, you are self-healing many areas of your life. Relationships. That's a tough one. Especially for believers, but for everyone, really. Because it's hard to find the right person who's going to act right. And so you find a lot of single people in the church, a lot of males and females looking, okay, for a spouse. Tough place. Well, my grace is sufficient for you. Okay, let's fall back on that. It's almost like a math thing. Let's fall back to what we know. The grace is sufficient. So what do you do now? Okay, grace is sufficient means that you are well because of God, and now His strength in you, in your weakness, you know, will manifest results if you understand that God just isn't going to place it in your life. I remember when I was single and I was in church, you know, a short time that I was single, and you'd walk into a church and all the single women, the neck would be looking back at this new guy. He just came in, and Lord just sent him to me. You know, that's the thing. But that's sitting there like Paul. That's Paul asking God to deliver from this issue, or deliver me someone, you know, or something to that effect. No, that God's grace is sufficient for you. God's strength is within your weaknesses. Now figure out how to make it work. I'm telling you. Get yourself in, do it, and use the analogy that I use even with the body. Do whatever is within your purview of influence. Get yourself in shape. A lot of times you sit in church too long waiting for that man or that woman, you start getting out of shape because you're just sitting. And that's the church you're eating. You know, and you're just in a terrible shape. Get yourself in shape. Do what you can do. Okay? And as you're getting yourself in shape, man, those endorphins are kicking in, the dopamine's kicking in, you're feeling good, you're looking in the mirror, you're looking good and all this stuff, you're feeling good. And I'm telling you this, a lot of the attractiveness of an individual isn't desperation, okay? I'm telling you that right now. Man, you want to make yourself attractive, be content, be happy within yourself, and be healthy, be looking good. I mean, we all have room for improvement. So while you're waiting, sort of like my exercise, while you're waiting, begin to improve yourself. Education-wise as well. Go to school. Go to a class. Maybe your husband or your wife isn't going to be walking through those church doors. Maybe they're going to be walking through some school doors. You know what I'm saying? Come on now. And then you find, because a lot of times we're looking for people in places, like the church is like often a place where unscrupulous people come to prey. I don't mean P-R-A-Y, I mean P-R-E-Y, on desperate folks, okay? So you find men that are looking, you know, maybe not even real. You don't know what this man's issue is. His weakness might be women, okay? So he walks into a church where you got half a dozen women looking for a husband. The perfect victims for this man, for his weakness. He might not be working on his weaknesses like you're trying to work on yours. So we have to be aware. And a lot of times you'll have people, like you'll have straight men coming into church just, you know, looking to victimize. Some straight men coming into churches, they're not looking to victimize, but that's their weaknesses, and they end up victimizing when the women are presenting themselves that way. And I might say it's the same, probably could be the same way with the women, but maybe not so much, but could be the same thing. You might have gay guys, you know, coming in there. A lot of times you have gay guys in church that are dealing with that maybe they're thinking, you know, I'm not too sure about this, I don't want to be this way, but this is what I am. So they'll come to church and have relationships with women or with a woman, string her along for a while, and then break it off, and then be validated in the churches. Well, this is just a regular guy because he was engaged to Sister So-and-so, okay? So you got a lot of dynamics going on in that environment. And so then when you're an individual that's simply waiting, you know, for God to send you that perfect mate. No, God isn't going to send you that mate. God, His grace is sufficient for you. His strength, he is made strong in your weakness, in that giving you an influence, a way to become more marketable, to become well, to be in the place where the right man is going to walk in that door. Church may not be the right place for this man or this woman to walk in the door. For you, it might be college. But anyway, well, I hope I've shared enough to give you something to think about. And I want to leave you with this one tidbit before we go. Is that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what you've done or what you're doing right now, that God truly, truly loves you. He really does.